Good morning, everybody. Welcome to TED Talks Ball. We've got a special Thursday morning edition. I've got Randon McMahon here. You may know him on Twitter as the Rando Commando. You may also know him from ice hockey. It's at hockey_royalty. So be sure you check him out. Give him some likes and subscribes, everybody. Seen him. I saw him on a show. I believe it was with Coach Rob Shue, and loved your action. We kind of got into it a little bit, I think, in the comments and then on Twitter a little bit. And so I was like, hey, what a great guy to have on, because most people who know me know that, I'm not looking for like an echo chamber or, people just come on and say, oh, Ted, you're great or anything. Like, if you don't think so, like, let me have it. It's kind of more fun that way. Get a little spicy. And anyway, let's see how things go. But Randon, or do you prefer I call you Rando? How should I address you?
No, Randon's good. That's my name.
Right on, Randon. Well, what did I miss? What do you have going on coming up that you want to promote? We can do it now, and also I like to do it at the end of the show too. So be sure and remind me on that.
Yeah, hockey_royalty is a LA Kings podcast. So for people who don't know, I kind of have like a hybrid fandom with Northern and Southern California. My mom and dad are from Southern California, big Dodgers fans and stuff like that. So kind of have that split fandom going on. So it's a LA Kings podcast. We do a lot of stuff about the Pacific. So if you are a Sharks fan, you can kind of get in there and take pieces away. Sometimes get guest scouts that talk about multiple prospects. It's not just ours. So even if you're a Sharks fan, you can get stuff from it. But right now we're kind of in the lull of the hockey season before camp starts. And so we're doing a lot of prediction type episodes. What do we think the players, how can they take the next step, that type of thing. So just trying to fill some episodes with some prediction type stuff, which fans seem to like. They want to predict lines and points and all that kind of stuff like that for the upcoming season. It's all hopes and dreams with no games being played right now. So that's kind of what we got going on.
Speaking of dreams, your LA Kings kind of crushed my Sharks dreams. The Sharks, for a long time, they were always like in the playoffs or doing well and not doing well in the playoffs. And then they finally made it. We played in the finals, right? Wasn't that, or was it the Western Finals against the Kings? And the Sharks were,
they played. Sharks it was the first round. It was the first round.
First round. Well, bottom line is the Sharks were up 3-0. And it was sort of this thing of like, oh, well, no one's ever come back from 3-0 to win a series. And the Kings did. And I was just like, oh man, I can't spend this much time, with the Sharks. I just don't feel like they're ever going to get it done. And sure enough, many years later, they have not gotten it done. So,
they're in a rebuild right now, new GM. So it's they're tearing it down. They got some good prospects though. William Eklund from Sweden, he's really good playmaking center/winger. They drafted Will Smith in the top 5 this year. So they got a lot of young guys that can go forth, and some veterans that can help carry them. They just got rid of their albatross contract in William Karlsson, paying him $11+ million for forever. Everybody thought that contract was immovable, and they got it done. I thought they probably could have got more in return, but you kind of walk that balance of which prospects are you getting versus unloading that money to do a proper rebuild. And I think they kind of chose the money side of it, because in hockey, unlike other sports, you can take money in return for the contract. So you can retain 50% of their salary, or up to 50%. And the Sharks could have done that and got a better return, but they chose not to. They took a less amount of the money and got less prospects in return. So
there you go. All right. Very nice. Well, Will Smith, interesting. So instead of Men in Black, he's going to be a Man in Teal, I guess. So hopefully that works out well for us, and it'll be interesting to watch. So Randon, this is your first time being on the show. So I'd love to get your thoughts a little bit on, just 49ers, what you've been hearing from camp, what we heard from Vegas joint practices, what you saw in the game on Sunday against the Raiders. And then, of course, later we'll get to what do we think it means coming up against the Broncos this weekend and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, man, let's dive on in.
Right on. So I was just wondering what your thoughts were versus like what you heard about camp and joint practices versus what you saw.
So I'm in Texas. I'm not in California, so I haven't really got a chance to go to any of the camps. So I try to listen to multiple podcasts. I try to get snippets from people on Twitter. I don't try to get my information from one source. Just trying to kind of see where it's at. And overall, I think camp is been kind of weird because we thought our best defensive player was going to be in camp already. So then everybody's like, I'm not worried, and we're still there. So the Nick Bosa thing is kind of like this amoeba that's going on. We all expect him to be there. So that's kind of a weird issue. But I think overall the offense is looking good. I think the Niners are doing a good job at giving McCaffrey some days off and some veterans some days off that they're going to take care of their body. They take this very seriously, and not that other players don't, but you expect McCaffrey to be at the top of his game. I just think that the QB drama is obviously the biggest note of camp. It has been in the Kyle Shanahan era, and it kind of frustrates me a lot. It really does. It's just a lot of. I think Niners Twitter. I posted this the other day, and I just said I think it's like the most toxic it's ever been, just because I think people. I kind of equate it to like the political spectrum. People just want to be right, and they want to have all these receipts, and they want to just. And you're a couch analyst, which I am too, but it's like, does it really matter if I'm right that Trey Lance is a bust or Trey Lance is this or Purdy is this or Purdy is that? No, it really doesn't. I mean, I guess it boosts your platform and maybe people listen to you on YouTube, but I think it gets really tedious. And then you have obviously the trollers that do it on purpose to get under your skin rather than have an actual conversation. And so it just kind of runs that balance. I wish we would have a team like the Chiefs where we have a quarterback, we know the quarterback, and we can just enjoy camp. We can enjoy the rookies, we can enjoy what's going on, but that hasn't been the case so far.
No, it hasn't, no doubt about it. And I did have some tweets recently along both of those lines, along the quarterback frustration thing. I had tweeted out, basically like, oh, Kyle, the guru, but, passed on Mahomes for Cousins, didn't get Cousins, passed on Brady to keep Jimmy. And people say, oh, well, they confuse that of like when we actually got Jimmy. I'm like, no. This was after we lost the Super Bowl with Jimmy. And then Brady wanted to come retire here. And Kyle said no, or they both said no to each other. That's another interesting point about the whole thing. Well, I'll just finish the thought I had, but or the tweet that I put out, which was basically like, then didn't get Stafford. And then I think having Purdy at QB3 to start last season, I mean, that one bothers me too, just because I don't think Purdy was our third best quarterback in 2022. And like, we've never really had a real QB competition for QB1. I mean, kind of in 2021, but Lance never really got many first team reps in that supposed competition against Jimmy. It was pretty much, I always said, you're not going to pay Jimmy $27 million to be the backup quarterback. And that's another one, paying Jimmy all that money, based off of 5 games. At the time, I didn't mind it. And a lot of these at the time, I didn't mind it. But it's kind of like you can kind of excuse each one as they happen or in a vacuum. But then you look at them all as a whole and like, here we are, year 7. And I've been saying, either unsettled at quarterback or now it seems like we are settled. But I mean, on the quarterback that I've been saying, my opinion was mid in 2022. And has been worse in camp and joint practices since. Ultimately, people get mad at me like, oh, you don't like Purdy. I'm like, no, I really like Purdy. Like, if you're calling a rookie QB mid, I think that's an enormous praise. Like, I think the only other QB I'd put in that conversation would be like Ben Roethlisberger, and he had a similar situation with a great D, great run game. Some really good weapons and whatnot. Not as good of weapons as what Purdy had, but bottom line is kind of all over the place there. But I'm a little frustrated with Kyle. I think he's a genius. I'm still a Shannon fan. I don't want to fire him. I just, at least not yet, I'm saying, but I just want him to do better. I want him to do better with the QB position, and I want a competition. I want a real competition. And whether it's, and I want to see Lance with the first team weapons. We still haven't seen Lance. And, for the most part with CMC, we saw him maybe like a couple reps the last Saturday of camp. But, the other days when Purdy was out, CMC was out as well too. And so it's just like, I don't feel like it's fair to compare these two quarterbacks until we see them in similar situations. Now, and I understand Lance looked bad on Sunday, but there are some really good reasons for it, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'd like to let's back this up and kind of dissect it a little bit. And I
there's a lot there. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. And I understand it's easy to talk and grade somebody in hindsight, but like when you go from the beginning of John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan's, was it a mistake not to even scout a quarterback and do your due diligence? Definitely it was. But do you understand where it's like they're trying to build their team? They're like, hey, maybe we don't want to repeat Alex Smith. We don't want to bring a quarterback into a crappy team. Like this team only had like 20 players on this roster from the previous season. Like they were starting brand new. Do we want to bring a rookie quarterback in here to fail and struggle? And let's have Brian Hoyer. He's good enough. We'll draft a quarterback in the mid rounds and let's build our team from the inside out. So that way we have a foundation for a young quarterback, because we're going to be bad this year. We're probably going to get another high pick. Now I understand that thinking, but to not even do your due diligence as a coach and be like, well, this guy's pretty good. Like this guy's pretty good. Maybe we should look at a quarterback instead of defensive lineman. I think sometimes where Lynch and Shanahan, like they get pigeonholed on a guy like Jerick McKinnon, and his failure on our team is mainly because of injury, but they thought he was the only running back that can do what he can do. And they paid him a gobs full of money. And then it didn't end up working out. And it's like, oh, we have to build defensive line first. Well, let's draft a defensive lineman with our first pick instead of doing the due diligence and looking at everything, or saying, hey, Kirk Cousins is going to be available. We're automatically going to put all of our eggs in that basket. And then when it doesn't work out, you're kind of, looking around to see who dropped the keys. And it doesn't seem like they're prepared. It doesn't seem like they are. The only move that in Kyle Shanahan's career that was not reactionary was going to get Trey Lance, and they have not utilized him or given him the opportunity. Like spending 3 first-round picks to go up and get a guy or make sure that you do get a guy, that's not being reactionary. I mean, a lot of people might say that it is because you lost out on Stafford, and that's the reason you did that. But I think it showed huevos for them to go up and do that, and now you're not utilizing that player.
And I would even back up behind Stafford and say that they were trying for Watson. And then Watson ran into all the legal issues. And then that brings us back to the 2017 draft, because I was a Watson guy because he just won the Natty against Bama. And which when they were the powerhouse back then, right? So, and then even if you say you don't want to go quarterback, guess what? There was another guy who went number 9 in that draft, where I said, oh, maybe we drafted the wrong guy from Stanford, and Solomon Thomas, because CMC was number 9 in that draft. Mm-hmm. So we could have easily had him as well too. But yeah, you're right. It's easy to nitpick in hindsight. But like I said, then eventually you're kind of like, well, here we are. Kind of like the same thing with, falling short in the NFC Championship games. Like each year you're like, oh, if we get the NFC Championship, that's great. But after 4 years of it, you're like, oh, I really want a ring. I'm really ready to start thinking about maybe like doing a Rams and go all in. Like, let's get a D end, let's get a right tackle, let's get some more depth, and just shove all our chips in and see what happens. There's arguments for both sides, and I've always been the sort of more consistent person, but again, you start to get frustrated over time. So I think
it's kind of like the Atlanta Braves of the 90s, right? You go to 15 straight division titles, and you're a dominant team, but you win 1 World Series. Like this team, you see it every single year for the Niners that I expect this team to win. And I'd rather have my team be good and, it's hard to win a Super Bowl. I'd rather have my team be good, but then it's always like, what can you do better? And people are impatient and want Kyle fired, even though he's had a good record. And people want to move on from Jimmy because he can't win the big one. And even though he's only been to one big one, you know what I mean? It's like a lot of people get impatient. And I guess a Niners franchise, especially fans who have been fans longer than I have, I'm not, I didn't watch the Montana era and all that kind of stuff like that. So, want that trophy again. They want to feel that. I've never felt that, or I haven't remembered that. I was like 7 when we won our last one. So,
right.
So it's like, yeah, I'm starved for it too. But, it's also the majority of my life as a Niners fan, we've been awful. It's been the Harbaugh era and this one. And so it's like,
Yeah.
hey, the team's good. It's every Sunday is fun. And I understand that, you don't want to be a bridesmaid and you want to be a bride and win and hoist the trophy and stuff, but like this team is stacked and it's good. And I think everybody agrees that we're a quarterback away or good quarterback play away from winning. So
absolutely. And I always say, you got to get there to win it, right? I mean, so like, people call us the Cowboys. I'm like, Cowboys haven't even been to an NFC championship game this century. That we've been to 7 NFC championships and 2 Super Bowls. It sucks to fall short, but at the same time, like I said, you got to get there to win it for sure. And then, with Kyle, like I said, I don't want to fire him. I've made that comparison to Andy Reid, but then today I was just sort of like, Andy Reid was Kyle until Kyle passed on Mahomes, and I was like, oh God, that hurts. And so, like, I have no doubts that Kyle can do it. I just hope he does it on this team and not the next team the way Andy Reid did, for sure.
I just think he could learn some stuff from Andy Reid. Like I watched the quarterback documentary and how he deals with Mahomes, and obviously Purdy and Lance aren't Mahomes, but the way he deals with his quarterbacks, like it feels like he has so much trust in what Mahomes is seeing out there. On Wednesdays during practice, they allow him to make up plays, and then if Reid likes it, then they throw it in the playbook, that circle play that they made or whatever that was in the championship. Like that was all made up by Mahomes. And I think that Kyle, it has to be his script, otherwise it will never work. And like that's why you went up and traded for Trey Lance, and that's what a lot of what I think he likes about Brock Purdy is the ability to scramble and make things out of nothing, that playground type mentality, to make plays out of nothing. And like, but you're not allowing your quarterbacks to do that. Like it has to be your script. It has to be 5-step drop. The route has to be here. Like if they're not able to do that, then you don't care about anything else. Right. So I think that Andy Reid has an ability to give his quarterback freedom and allow his system to work at the same time. And that's why you're always going to have the Chiefs be in the zone, because nobody thought they were going to be anything. They lost Tyreek Hill, right? And then like they had Juju Smith-Schuster and a bunch of nobodies, and he still had threw for like 5,000 yards. Like it really all depends on the trust and the within Mahomes. And even if you take Mahomes out of it and you have a quarterback that's a tier down, top 10 quarterback, you're still going to have that freedom, right? I think the Chargers are going to look a whole lot better with Kellen Moore in there and letting Herbert kind of do what his thing is, right? So it really just depends on it. And maybe I'm being too harsh on Kyle, but it seems to me that it's his script or nothing, and they don't allow for that kind of thing to manifest itself.
Yeah, no, and there's a sort of thought, like with that tweet that I went through of all the QBs that Kyle had access to and didn't get, and you start to wonder, does he even really want one? Right? Does he even really want a Brady or a Mahomes or a Stafford or like an Aaron Rodgers, who probably isn't going to just do whatever Kyle says? And also, can Kyle's ego handle him and his system not being the star of the show and sharing the spotlight with somebody? I have questions about that too. And then somebody on a show yesterday brought up a really good point, which was like, would those quarterbacks even want to play for a coach like Kyle, who is so controlling and isn't going to let them do what they want to do? So it's kind of like, it could be that Kyle passed on them. It could be that they passed on Kyle, but ultimately it's sort of like the same, different, but the same. Like, it's Kyle, right? It's hard to imagine us having a franchise QB with him. And now we've got one, I think, on our roster that we're not developing. And then it's just even more damning. And maybe he's just in the doghouse. That's my hope. Maybe he can break out like Ayuk, but he's got to have opportunities to do it. And I didn't really think that Sunday was a good opportunity to break out personally. We'll get to that here in just a second, but let me just say hi. We've got some audience members here. We got Randy Daytona in that. He says, as a business owner with employees, I want to do exactly what I say and nothing else. Well, there you go. So Randy is believes in that for Kyle. So as a business owner, that's fair. I can see that. I just think that you may not get the best employees, the ones that are going to help, because I'm a believer that good ideas can come from anywhere, and it doesn't have to be like top down. And if you allow your employees some freedom, they might surprise you with some better performance than you expected if they were just, robots doing exactly as Randy orders. So I'm not going to try and tell you how to run your business. I don't even know what business you're in. I'm just telling you from my personal experience that the best leaders, in my experience, empower their employees. They have two really universal traits. They stand up to criticism to block the team from it. If something goes wrong, hey, it's my fault. I take the blame, and I will do better. And they duck praise so that goes to the team. Like, hey, oh, Kyle, you're great. No, it was my team that did it, and that type of thing. So those are some of my things on leadership. But again, Randy, appreciate your input, and I'm not going to try and tell you how to run your business by any stretch of the imagination. You're just saying, hey, bros, and we got Steve-O in the house too, Steve-O Supremo. He does great custom sneaks if anybody needs something like that. So I guess, do you want to give me your impressions from Sunday's Raiders game?
Yeah, let's get into we're stuck in the past. Let's get to the present here. So I thought Lance, like, you look at the two, I think dropped interceptions has been the new thing for this camp about how many dropped interceptions people have, and are they real interceptions? What are they like? You got to be honest. Like, if that stat line, if both dropped interceptions turn into interceptions, and he's 10 for 15 or 9 for 15 with 2 picks and no touchdowns, it looks pretty bad. I thought the offensive line really didn't do him much service in some of the things, and I thought he was indecisive in others. He made some really good throws. Like, there was just a sprinkle of everything. I know PFF had him as one of the worst graded players on the roster, and I could see that and be fair there. But Nick Zagel was getting pushed back ridiculous amount. Like, he was a sieve or a screen door or whatever you want to call it back there. So pressure, yes, pressure up the middle is the worst thing for a quarterback, because he doesn't allow you to step into the throw. Right now, you're moving, you're on the go, or you're throwing into pressure, you're throwing into that route. And you look at like the 3rd and 6, the pressure was coming from the direction where he wanted to throw the football. Dwelly didn't run the correct route, and like, it made him hesitate, which if he just threw the football and it was an incomplete pass, then you're like, oh, he made the right read, everybody else's fault. So I almost want to see him sling it. And that's one thing that I do like about Purdy, is he's kind of got that Brett Favre mentality. And nobody's going to say Brett Favre's not a Hall of Famer, but he has the most interceptions of all time, and so is the only thing you want from a gunslinger is for them to have a gun and not a water pistol. And Purdy has a water pistol, right? So,
had a water pistol before the injury. So that's the thing. Sorry, I cut you off, but go ahead.
No, I mean, I watched a lot of baseball, and I played a lot of baseball, and majority of people who get Tommy John don't ever throw the same afterwards, and very few get to the same miles per hour. It's a common misconception that people throw better. People have stronger arms because they're working all the, supplemental muscles around the arm. And so they have a healthier arm, a stronger arm, but it doesn't mean they're throwing harder, or that type of thing. It rarely ever does in baseball. There's obviously the outlier exceptions, and if Purdy's an outlier exceptions and all of a sudden he's rookie of the year, humping it down the field, we'll see. But so far it does not look, it doesn't look that way. So, I think that you're looking at Lance here as he just needs reps. Like, there's some of these quarterbacks, like, you look at, I believe I heard this on another podcast, like last year, Tom Brady had more passing attempts than Lance has ever had in his entire career. And it's like, you just got to get on the field. And I think that this has been a mistake from the beginning. Like, I understand they want to win, and they kept Jimmy at $27 million. But since 2000, out of all the quarterbacks drafted in the top 5, the only 2 to ever win MVP started every single game their first season. So, and those are Matt Ryan and Cam Newton. So you're looking at, you got to get reps. You got to take the bumps, right? If people thought we're going to make a snap decision on Peyton Manning after 4 games, he would have never been a Hall of Famer, right? Like, and I'm not saying that Lance will ever be that way, but right now it's like, what is that term? Schrodinger's cat. Like, you don't know what you have. Like, you have a quarterback in the box. You just don't know if he's good or bad until you open the box. Like, you got to open the box and see what you got in him.
Open the box, Kyle.
and
open the box.
And it's like, you're just walking the fence. So you're like, you go up and make this power move to get a quarterback, and then you don't play him. And then he gets a starting job the next season and gets unfortunate with an injury. and now you're not even giving him a chance to compete. And I understand the point of view from the Niners, right? Brock Purdy goes undefeated. He plays exceptionally well. He was I think it was top 7 PFF grade for a rookie quarterback ever. So like he had a lot of good positive things to his season, and people want to poke holes in that, and that's fine. But ultimately the W's were on the board, and he carried that team in some aspects down the stretch. And so if he has a leg up going into camp, I get it, and I think, I don't know what Kyle Shanahan was expecting. Like, okay, well, Trey's got to show me in the 3 practices that I give him with the ones, because Purdy's out, and he has to show that. And if he doesn't, then it's out. But I think that's not the way to go. And I think that you shouldn't have just given Lance the reins either. And what is a fair competition? Because if there's a fair competition, you're also taking reps from Purdy. If Purdy's the better quarterback and needs to get the reps because he's coming back from surgery, then you're taking his reps away. But are first team reps better than second team reps? Shanahan said that they're about the same amount of reps, right? So if it's just the getting the reps that you need, then maybe they should be able to switch it back and forth. I think it's just really tough to see that you use this asset and then you're making a decision off of 4 games. Like, and if Lance is nothing, then I get it. Like, but I'll ask you this. No other coach probably would have lived through the number 3 overall pick being a bust so far, but Shanahan has, because he's won games. Is this a fear of him losing his job, that he has a quarterback that can win games, or in both Jimmy Garoppolo and Purdy, and he's afraid to just let the reins go? Or do you believe that he doesn't feel that Trey Lance has it based off the practice that he's been given?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a Purdy factor with how well Purdy did. Yeah, I think there's the winning games factor. I think there's the locker room factor. The locker room just wants to win, so whoever wins, they're going to pick that person. Lance hasn't won yet. I think there's that spotlight ego thing with Kyle, and along those lines, there's something we haven't talked about yet, which was Trey Lance going to see Jeff Christensen and Pat Mahomes in the offseason. And Kyle was asked about that, and Kyle said, that was not my idea. I did not, recommend that. I had nothing to do with that, essentially. And so I think Kyle, some of it is revenge for that, because it made Kyle look dumb for whoever he had, whether it's John Beck or Scangarella or whoever, in those first couple of years with Lance, never touched his mechanics. And now in just a few short practices, Christensen has him looking very different, more touch, more accuracy, and a quicker release, which is all things a lot of the Lance haters have been saying for years. And so, it's part of me is just like thinking Kyle just wants to, make it tough on Lance so that if he does win the QB1 job, like he could actually win the locker room too, because it doesn't do any good to give Lance QB1 if the locker room, and that sort of goes along lines with the whole Jimmy thing. Yeah, I think we needed a bridge QB for Lance. He's so young and so raw. I mean, he clearly was not ready to step in and start game 1, even without the avulsion fracture in his finger, which he had too. But I think Jimmy was the wrong bridge QB. I think we could have gone with like an Andy Dalton for a lot less money, had more weapons and more defense, more everything, and also had a QB that we didn't have emotional ties to in the locker room. So we could swap them in and out, bring Lance in gradually, not rather than like this all or nothing type of situation where it's like you're either the starter or you're sitting completely. That's sort of my thoughts on the whole thing. I mean, as far as Sunday goes, Lance was not good. Like you said, he threw 2 almost interceptions. I've been getting on Purdy for the almost interceptions during last season. And it makes sense though, because he threw a lot of interceptions at Iowa State, and he's throwing a lot of interceptions in camp and the joint practices. And so the almost interceptions, they count. And in camp, less, obviously, like camp interceptions and almost interceptions. Like I look at them like QB wins, Randon, as far as like they mean something, but they don't mean everything. They don't mean nothing. It's not like the hugest deal, but when people say, oh, Ted, let's wait for a game, I'm like, well, first of all, we need to figure out who to start in that game, right? And second of all, it's not just the interceptions. He's taken a lot of sacks in camp, and until like I think Tuesday, he really hadn't thrown a good deep ball all through camp. Like they're all overthrows and underthrows. So it's more than just one thing. And so when it's all going wrong, then it looks really bad. And it's like, and I still sort of get why the Niners are kind of, I'm saying propping them up. I've used that in some of my titles. I've called one like Operation Prop Up Purdy and Full Swing, or, something along those lines. Full steam ahead. But I kind of get it. If you think that Purdy's going to be back to his 2022 self by week 1, then it all kind of makes sense. But if we keep on this path and Purdy keeps throwing interceptions and we lose some games to start the season, especially if it's because of Purdy, which it looks like the defense and the weapons, everything looks elite, especially if we can get Bosa re-signed, then we're going to question. I'm already questioning giving Darnold so many second team reps to compete with Lance. And now we're letting him start the first half of this game like Lance did last weekend. They announced that was my title for this is Darnold, starter against the Broncos this Saturday. I think we'll start questioning, why do we give Purdy so many first team reps and not have more of a competition for him and make him earn it? Because you only have one opportunity. And like you said, we've invested all this in Lance, but it's not just the investment in Lance either. It's not like people go, oh, well, you just are invested in Lance because of what we spent on Lance. It's like, no, it's because of what I've seen that showed me why we invested, right? And obviously there's not like a lot of consistent greatness from Lance, clearly. Even it's basically one half against the Texans. The second half was great. But I see flashes in every single game, including this last game. There are things he did where he created to throw to Snead and the frozen rope 20 yards down the field to Conley. I said, like, this is a club that Purdy does not have in his bag. Like, Purdy can make that same throw. It just doesn't look the same. It's got a rainbow. It takes longer to get there. It's still effective. But, like, sometimes you just want to zip a ball in there and get it into a tight window. And I'm not even saying it was a tight window because it wasn't there. But, that type of throw that Lance made, Purdy cannot make. And I will, die on that hill. As many people want to tell me I'm wrong, I will never believe that Purdy can make that exact type of throw. So,
and it's just, I think what the Jets are doing. I think what the Jets are doing is different. Like, you're bringing in a Hall of Famer to win, right? And Zach Wilson has gotten 2 seasons of play, and he's been really bad. So you're choosing Purdy, who has had 5 games over your investment at that point. You're not bringing in a Hall of Famer to do the same, right? Like, it's not apples to apples. Like, people are, they're moving on from Wilson. They've seen enough. Yeah, but it's not the same. Like, you're bringing in a guy, who if he would have won the Super Bowl, it would have been the best story probably ever in the history of football. Like, rookie's never done it. It would have been Mr. Irrelevant and all that kind of stuff like that. But we didn't win, and I'm sure you know that. So, like, at this point, it's not the best story of football. It was a great ride. Like, I was surprised as everybody else. I was at the bar watching the Miami game. I saw Jimmy go down. I go, well, there's our season right there. Like, there's no chance, and Purdy lights the world on fire. I was Team Purdy all the way as well. Like, I root for the emblem on your hat over the name on the back of the jersey. So I just think it's, you just don't have evidence. And then you're bringing in, I think that it also, what drives me nuts about Kyle with this whole thing is that I've never once heard him come out and just like fully back Lance on anything, right? It's always, he's young, he's learning, he's a bright kid, like all this kind of stuff. It's almost like he's talking down to him. But then like Sam Darnold is Steve Young and Brock Purdy's the real deal. And anytime that like, hey, you worried about the interceptions in camp? No, we have the real deal here. Like,
Jimmy's the best QB since Steve Young. Good Lord, have mercy, Kyle.
So like, which is what a coach should do. Which is what a coach should do. He should back. That's what I liked about Harbaugh, was that he was all about his players. He's backed up his players all the time, no matter what, whether he believed it or not. He backed him up, and like, I haven't seen him back up Lance once.
No, especially with this clown coming out and saying that Lance was like basically born this way, and saying he might get cut. Like, who's that? Is, I mean, he might get traded. There is no flipping way on God's green earth that Trey Lance will be cut from this team. And anybody saying that loses all credibility, besides the fact that they were just awful and mean, and there's almost undertones to what was being said about out of the his mom picked him up. He didn't have QB skills. Like, who has QB skills? These are learned. This is not innate abilities, folks. These things are learned. Real quick, also, I just wanted to mention, Randy had this thing here about Tommy John, and you mentioned Tommy John. I just want to make sure to clarify that Brock Purdy did not have Tommy John. He had UCL repair plus internal brace. It's the same ligament as Tommy John, but Tommy John is a full replacement reconstruction. This is a repair, less downtime, supposedly back sooner. But I'll tell you what, there's just so little data on it because the only other NFL QB to ever have it was Nick Mullins. He didn't play in a regular season game for a year. It was bad. He was up on the Browns. He lost to the Raiders. And then since then, it's been 2.5 years total since he injured it, December of 2020 and 20th of 2020. And he really hasn't played in a full game to show. Like, he can't even say he's 100% now, let alone a year after. So it's just like, I don't know. I still have doubts that Purdy will be ready week 1. Supposedly he's ahead of schedule, but there's just no data on this stuff. And so that makes it really hard to predict, in my opinion. But yeah, I mean, Kyle not backing up Lance, it's malpractice. And Kyle didn't back up Lance on Sunday. I never really went through my stuff on Sunday. Kyle didn't call barely any run plays for the first 3 drives, and they all failed. In the 4th drive, guess what? He starts with 2 runs, and that's the drive we scored TD. I know it could have been an interception, but ultimately, Lance got into rhythm, and he gave him some gimme throws and some runs, and all of a sudden everything's flowing. That's why I'm saying Kyle sabotaged Lance on Sunday. We've never had a QB where we had 20 passes to 8 runs ever, especially not on the first 3 drives where it was like 9-1 or 8-1. That's ridiculous. Especially when you got a sieve for an O-line, because I said all through camp that our defense was much deeper than our O-line or our weapons. And that's why I was saying Lance going against the 2s, it might be tougher than Purdy going against the 1s with the best line and the best weapons, especially without Bosa on the first team D and with Kinlaw on the second team, because Kinlaw wrecked shop in camp. And he didn't play well on Sunday, and neither did, Isaiah Oliver didn't play well either. But I would just say that I would hold off, tearing these people down until we see them with all the guys around them, with Hargrave and Armstead and Fred and Dre and Lenore and Charvarius Ward and Huff and Gibson. I think they'll both look a lot better when the defenses can't focus on them so much, or when there's more pass rush for Oliver and more pass rushers to deflect from Kinlaw. I think they'll both look a lot better based off what we've seen in camp. But the thing with Kinlaw is he just has to stay healthy. I think if he does, I don't think he'll be great, but I think he'll be a very good, or one of our best depth pieces.
I just don't think he knows what he is. He was drafted to be a 330-pound defensive tackle and clog up the middle and pass rush from that area. And I don't think his knees can accept that weight anymore. So he's lost so much weight. He's down to he looks in shape, but he's 280, 290. So then you're getting into that light D tackle, heavy D end range, and he's been getting some snaps at D end. But I don't think he is what we drafted him to be. And that's why they went and got a plug in the middle in Hargrave. But it's I don't know what he's going to be in his career. And obviously you draft a player with injury history, he's potentially going to be injured all year or his entire career. And I obviously wish him the best, but it's the same thing with Drake Jackson. When he was at USC, they had him at 270, then 240, then back up to 265. He hasn't had a cohesive season of being the same thing, doing the same thing, getting those reps. And I just don't know if Kinlaw's ever going to put it together.
Yeah, I think the health is a huge concern with him for sure. James Durrell says, what's important on the football field, making all the throws or keeping plays alive? Keeping plays alive is more important, but the thing is, if we're comparing Purdy and Lance, which clearly this is, is that the thing I say about Purdy is everything he does well can be learned, except for the quickness. His one elite trait when it comes to the spider web thing is quickness. Now, obviously, he's very elite. I say he's like a mental giant. He's great at processing, and he's a great leader, and he throws out on time, and that kind of thing. But like, I just can see Lance learning to keep drives alive and make all the throws, like that frozen rope I was talking about to Conley. And so that's the draw for me with Lance is what I see his potential. I think he will get there too. He's a hard worker. They say like high character guys are much more likely to reach their ceiling. And he's a really high character guy. My only knock on Lance, honestly, quickness is one. My only real knock on him is like, is he too nice? Is he too humble? Does he have that sort of like, I feel like with quarterbacks, you need the guy to like reach in and tear your heart out and show it to you while it's still beating. And does Lance have that, or can he cultivate that? I think that's my question with Lance.
Well, I mean, we just haven't seen enough on the field. I mean, I get why people like Purdy, like throws of touchdowns, like give it, put it in the veins. He has that, that dog in him, as people like to say. And, it's
he has it. He has it. I agree. He has it. That it factor.
And so it's like, can you win a game? Can you win games with a guy that doesn't have the best arm talent? Yeah, you can. I mean, it's anticipation and all this kind of other stuff, but I don't see crowning a kid after 5 games. Now I understand why you give him the lead in camp, but will Kyle admit that? Say we lose the first 3 games and Purdy doesn't look great. Does Kyle admit that he's wrong and move to Trey, or does he sink with this ship and allow Purdy to try to work through his stuff? Like, there's going to be a lot of carrying these amount of quarterbacks. There's going to be a lot of chatter everywhere, and maybe he doesn't care about that kind of stuff. But I think that you're looking at it like I like the kid that has a little bit of moxie in it. I just watched the Johnny Manziel documentary, and it kind of reminds me of that. Like he just took the opportunity, was big dog on campus, and won the approval of the entire fan base, his entire locker room in the matter of 5 games with the way that he was playing. Like, you don't often see a third string quarterback have the entire stadium chant his name. Like his father was crying, like that, those kind of moments, like, are ingrained in a lot of people's fan bases, me included. Like, I was along for the ride. Like, I get it, but is he the future of this franchise? After 5 games, I still have doubts about that, and I still don't think Trey's been given a fair shot. But the NFL generally is not an experimental league, which is where other sports have minor leagues. We don't. And so, like, either you fail on the grand stage or you move forward. And I don't know if the Niners and Kyle Shanahan wants to have that opportunity for somebody to do that.
No doubt about it. Yeah, and Randy says winning games. So yeah, everybody's like, oh, all Jimmy does is win, all Purdy does is win. But QB wins, like I said, they mean something. They don't mean everything. They don't mean nothing. But like, they mean a lot less when you have the best group of weapons in football, when you have a really solid O-line, when you have the number 1 D in the NFL, and you have Kyle designing and calling the plays. Then QB wins mean a little bit less. And yeah, I have doubts about Purdy. He has it, but he also has limitations. He has a limited arm, limited height, limited top speed. He's got the quickness, but there's a difference between quickness and top speed. Like, Purdy's not running away from anybody. He has no long runs. He'll dodge them for a step or two, but then they're going to track him down and chase him down from behind. So it all matters, and it makes it difficult to be. And also, at some point, if we keep him, we got to pay him, and he is not worth top QB money based off of last year, what I saw. Now, he could improve. I think he probably will improve a little bit, but I think DCs will also catch up and learn how to, attack his weaknesses and limit his strengths. So it could just cancel out. We never know what'll happen, essentially. But starting this year on rehabbing his arm is not the ideal way to have a big improvement when you miss OTAs and minicamp, and then you're limited in camp, and everything we've seen doesn't look like what we saw in 22 so far.
And a lot of people give him the rust benefactor, but Lance hasn't played since September either in a real game. So I mean, like, where's the benefit there? I mean,
well, that's part of what I gave him, for that Raiders game. It's like, he's going to be rusty after 11 months of no tackle football, especially when you consider 4 years of only 7 games. Besides that, I mean, he's just so young and so raw. And then you don't run the ball. You got a crummy O line, and our weapons separated some, but a lot of times when the weapons separated, that was when the O-line wasn't protecting him, or TDP was doing a poor job. No Kittle, no Juice to help with the blocking. It was a bad situation. And I hope it looks a little bit better this Saturday. I do believe that it will. It's I think it will. James is saying, well, the job should have been Jimmy's. Why did they even draft Lance? Well, because Jimmy, kind of falls apart on the biggest stage and also had a lot of injuries. So I think that's pretty much why we drafted Lance.
But I understand that argument. You look at, and I was before that draft, I was wondering, okay, great. We had another injury. We're gonna get a higher pick, and you look at that pick. I was hoping for a corner. I'm a big corner. I'm a big defensive back over defensive line guy, which is the opposite of what the Niners view. But you could have had a key corner there. You could have had Parsons, opposite of Nick Bosa, for 4 seasons, right? Obviously, you wouldn't be able to pay both of them $30+ million because Bosa is going to reset the market, and then Parsons' agent is going to try to top him. So, you could have had that with Jimmy, having an even higher defensive, level of the team. I don't know how much higher you can go than one. I know we were the best.
Can.
I know we were the best.
Last year, our D-line was actually pretty weak outside of Bosa last year. So, yeah, it would have been huge last year.
Our coverage kind of in the turnovers we finally created there. But you look at that, or say you got a Patrick Surtain, right? Obviously, I know that he was drafted earlier, but you move up a couple spots. You're not giving away a first rounder for that. You're giving away, lesser picks, and you go up and get Patrick Surtain, and then, he's that rookie dynamo. You look at what Charvarius Ward has done for this team and what Richard Sherman did when, in earlier or in his tenure here, you cut the field almost in half, and so if you had a Patrick Surtain on a cheap contract and you had, Jimmy Garoppolo, I wasn't a Jimmy hater. I just knew his limitations. And people are like, oh, he wins games. That's all we need. It's like, no, that's not all you need all the time. You can win you can win a Super Bowl with Nick Foles. You can win a Super Bowl with Eli Manning or Joe Flacco, but those players have to play the best football of their careers for a span of 4 games. And that's not always possible.
No, I'm with you 100%. I always say, I appreciate Jimmy helped us win when we were bad, but as we got good, he kind of held us back a little bit. But yeah, Surtain or Micah Parsons, it's hard to argue that wouldn't have been the difference in 21 or 2022. So no doubt when we got so close already, if Jimmy could have stayed healthy. Silly Fungy's a Rams fan. He's one of the cool Rams fans out there. He says he gives us some dad jokes. My uncle named his dogs Timex and Rolex. They're his watchdogs. But I'm bummed. Wah, wah, wah. Thanks, Silly. Appreciate it. He said, to be fair, the guy who said that is old and old people bust balls and aren't sensitive. I am that old guy. LOL. Yeah, no. When you get older, you got no time for the niceties. Just get to the bottom line. Somebody was like, oh, you're turning it into old and crotchety, Ted. I'm like, well, at least I'm not delusional, I mean, it's I don't know. We're always looking for that DE. There he was. Yeah, well, yeah, no doubt. Micah Parsons would have been incredible. And then we got some more comments on that. Yeah, Josh Johnson Super Bowl. I don't know about that, but he definitely could have lifted Jimmy luggage for sure. James says, I've been happy to keep Jimmy mid as he is. If they had injury worries about him, draft a Stonewall O-line instead of making. Yeah, I mean, O-line has been something we've definitely neglected. And I brought that up. It looked like we're trying out 3 offensive tackles. It's like, gee, who could have seen this coming? When you let Mike McGlinchey walk, you take your swing tackle and your only swing tackle and McKivitz, and you make him the right tackle. Now you got no swing tackle. Oh, Matt Pryor, we like him, and Jalon Moore. Oh yeah, he's really shown us so much, right? I mean, or Leroy Watson, who is actually doing all right for a converted tight end. He could be something in time, but I don't think this year he's going to be what we need for a swing tackle. So it's there are a lot of people like to be like, oh, Ted, you're critical of Kyle. He's never wrong. And it's just no, everybody is wrong. And it's just how do you handle it? And how, do you keep repeating the same mistakes or do you learn from them and move on? And so it's you can be critical. And a lot of us were critical of this tackle situation and defensive end, as Randon's brought up. These are things that we saw coming. When you let go of Menahu, Ebukam, and Jordan Willis, then you got some wonders if the people coming, even though they weren't great, they were solid. They were all solid players.
I think the defensive line, the D end situation is fine in my opinion. Like it's the same thing we've been complaining about Trey not getting playing time. Like you drafted Drake Jackson in the second round, and he's got to get games. Like that's just what it is. And like whether you like that or not, I mean Cleveland Farrell and all these guys that are hybrids, I think going out and getting a Ngakoue or whatever for 10 million is what he got. Like then you're not playing Drake Jackson. Like you're not playing him at all. And then so are you ever going to get it to know what you have out of him? Yeah. If you let Drake Jackson play this year and he's bad, then he's bad. Like, and that that's not a right forward, and you have to go out next offseason and get something. But if he is something, then you can be like, okay, well, I know I have a player there, and Cleveland Farrell's probably going to get paid somewhere else, and we're going to have to get somebody else's busted DN for our coach to turn around. But at least you have a player there, especially for 2 more seasons on a rookie deal, and you can develop that stuff elsewhere. My biggest thing is like you have a fullback getting paid $8 million. Like you're paying 2 linebackers over 10+ million, and I know Greenlaw is an All-Pro. He played at All-Pro level last year. I get it, but it's just allocations of money. If linebacker is not a top paid position. And when you have an elite one, an all-pro one, and Fred Warner, you can't pay another one because then you're taking money from elsewhere. Like Juice is on the field less than 50% of the snaps, I believe, and he's getting paid $8 million. Like he's the best fullback in football, but where is that money going to be?
I got to call foul on that real quick because it's $5 million AAV. I think next season and the season after, it's a $7 million cap hit, but that's only because we paid him less early in the contract. So it's $5 million average. But still, it's a lot. It's a lot. I think we need to use him more. I'm with you there, 100%. And yeah, it's tough when you have all these highest paid players. You end up with no middle ground. We used to be middle heavy, and now we've lost a lot of guys. Great example is Jimmy Ward. $6-7 million, he's gone to the Texans. Or like Azeez Al-Shire to the Tennessee Titans now too. Similar type situation. I feel like we're a lot like the Rams were leading up to their Super Bowl victory, and kind of like when we talk about the DN, like I kind of want my Von Miller. I mean, I'm all for developing Drake, and I think we can still do it, as part of sub packages and bring him in and let the head honcho rest some. But like I want Von Miller and a real right tackle. Those are the two things.
But when was that? That trade was made deadline, right?
That's what I'm saying. And we may do that. We may do that this year. We've got money and we've got picks. I do believe that first round 2024 draft pick will go to right tackle, whether it's in the 2024 draft or it's at the trade deadline or even before the season starts.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that.
So Randy says Jimmy is up 10 against Mahomes. I know it wasn't all him. He can't be blamed for that loss. If Ward makes an interception, we go on to beat Cincinnati. Yeah, I don't blame Jimmy 100% for the Super Bowl. Obviously, Kyle made mistakes. He should have run the ball more. Tyrann Mathieu was saying we had no answers for the run. Thank God they'd stopped running it. The D got tired, but nonetheless, the D fell apart too. And the refs let the Chiefs back into that game. So I'm not saying they handed it to them because the Chiefs then went and ran with it once they got the opportunity, but the refs let them in on that 3rd and 15 where Bosa clearly got held. But to say that we go and beat Cincinnati, I have issues with that. Like, I'm not saying we couldn't. I'm just saying in Cincinnati, when we played them, a lot of stuff broke right for us to barely beat them in overtime. Right. And so we had 2 muff punt recoveries that were only 2 touchdowns in the first half. And one of those still needed a taunting to get us in the end zone. It would have stalled out on 3rd down if they hadn't taunted us. And then there was a drop pick 6 that Jimmy threw. We only scored 3 points in the second half. And Logan Wilson was out the entire game. Their star middle linebacker, who's he's not Fred, but he's a stud linebacker for sure. And then they had I'm breaking on the guy's name. The one who came over from New Orleans, who's their defensive end, who he missed the second half. And again, he's not Bosa, but he's a really good defensive end. And he missed the whole second half. And then, of course, in the Super Bowl, Jimmy and Trent Williams would have still been injured. And they were both healthy when we barely squeaked it out in Cincinnati. So to say that we would have beat the Bengals if we beat the Rams, I mean, maybe.
I don't even think we would have been guaranteed to win the Rams game if he makes that interception. Like that play was like with 9 minutes left, right? Like,
and it wasn't Ward either. It was Jaquiski Tart, the drop Tart. Yeah. But no, I appreciate that, Randy, and good points for sure, no doubt about it. What else we got? James saying Ward wasn't. Oh, it's Tart. Yeah, that's right, exactly. Yeah, we got it corrected. Not a fan. Oh, I'm a big fan of Ward. I think we're gonna miss him a lot at that nickel spot. But
let's talk about that. So how has Oliver looked in camp versus he looked awful in the game, but how does he look in camp compared to that?
I think he's looked all right. I don't think he's, the big thing with Oliver is he's just a lot cheaper. He's like $2 million compared to $7 million. So I always say you don't have to be a better overall player to be a better value in a hard capped league. So if you can get half the production for less than half the cost, then you're probably ahead of the game. But Jimmy Ward is really good. He had 3 picks in the second half of last season once he got back into the lineup and of course got that club off his hand. He played for a while where he was only playing with one hand. He's a hell of a player.
Womack started the season there last year. How has he looked? I mean, is that could he have a potential to push Oliver for that job?
Or what really happened in Sunday was Ambry Thomas. I was picking on him all through camp. So was Purdy. And I was saying, people are saying, well, Purdy's playing against the first team, Ted. And I'm like, well, no, most of Purdy's completions were against Ambry and AJ Parker. And I was like, these guys look more like they're like off the team than first team to me. And then God bless Ambry, he proved me wrong. He came out and played really well on Sunday to the point of like people are even saying maybe even Ambry on the boundary and punch Lenore inside. And because remember, Lenore was originally supposed to be our nickel. And then we moved him outside. So we got options. Womack's looked good. He didn't look good against the Raiders. But again, it's this thing of like, we don't have all the better people around you. You just, especially the pass rush. We don't have Hargrave, Bosa, and Armstead. Things are going to look a lot different when there's more time. We got whooped in the trenches on both sides of the ball on Sunday for sure.
Plus, I think nickel's probably the hardest position on the defense. Like you're getting shifty wide receivers. A lot of teams are investing in their slot. Whether it's a big slot or that shifty slot, and then every receiver has a 2-way go on you. Plus, you get motions and all these stuff. You have to go through all these linebackers. I think it's one of the toughest positions to play on the defense. And so it's going to be tough. I wonder if the way of paying the corner is going to be paying those nickels a little bit more money to be effective. I mean, you're looking at Cooper Kupp, right? 1,900 yards out of the slot, right? Like Jefferson's playing a little bit more out of the slot. Keenan Allen out of the slot. I wonder if a lot of teams are going to catch on and try to draft and pay corners a little bit more money to play the nickel.
It's an interesting thought. I think it makes sense. I don't know. We were lucky with K1 and we were lucky with Jimmy Ward. They both did a really good job in that position. But K1 towards the end sort of started to slip a little bit in coverage, but he was always good in run fit. And that's the key thing. It's, people are always looking at coverage, but a lot of it is just, can they stop the run? Because you got to do that first in this league to make people throw in the first place. Randy was saying that Ward was hurt half his career. That's definitely true, but he had a vitamin D deficiency. And so once he started like drinking his milk, I think Grant Cohn was one of the first to say he needs to drink some milk. And sure enough, that cured a lot of it. And I did have the broken hand last season, but largely the broken bones went away, and that only kept him out for a few games, because he did play at the club. Randy says right tackle next draft. Fingers crossed. Yeah. I mean, that would be the smart way. We'll get more bang for the buck if we wait to draft a right tackle. Theoretically, I mean.
But what elite right tackle are you getting at 25 to 30? Like.
Well, you could always move up too. I mean, I suppose we just mint third round comp picks. We have 3 every year, like clockwork. So we do have a lot of picks next year, as far as I recall. I see your point. That's why we got doing the nickel. Well, I mean, what happened was Gibson came in and he was just a ball hawk. He had like 5 interceptions last year, and played well enough against the run and in coverage that. If you can generate turnovers, that was the one thing Ward never did a good job at free safety, was getting, interceptions, Ward or Tart. So once we saw that with Gibson, it was like, ooh, wow. And he was close enough on the other things that it made us just be like, and he was cheaper. That was what sealed the fate for Jimmy Ward with the 49ers. And definitely when healthy. Jimmy and Trent were injured by the NFC Championship. Trent had the high ankle sprain. Jimmy had 2 injuries. He had the shoulder that required surgery, the capsule injury, and then he also had the avulsion fracture in his thumb, similar to the one that Lance had in his index finger. Neither one of them ever got surgery. Although it's weird when it happened, they were saying Jimmy would need surgery after the season, but to my knowledge, he never got surgery on that thumb. That happened in Tennessee, and then the shoulder happened in Dallas when basically he was protecting his thumb and he fell on his elbow instead of his hand, and then that jammed his shoulder up and caused the shoulder injury. So got some more folks in the house. Niners all damn day in the house, giving us some fire. Thanks, appreciate it. Silly Fungi. Now we'll probably get a real talk here. I've heard people talking about Niners Super Bowl window shrinking. Do you agree? How long is that window open in your opinion? You want to go with that first, Randon?
Yeah. Do we have a franchise quarterback or not? Because if you have a franchise quarterback, the window's always open. I mean,
there you go.
And so, if people are saying that it's how this roster is constructed currently, a couple of years, because people's contracts end, you're not going to be able to pay them. Debo's probably gone after this contract, and you get other rookies to come on in. But if
Trent Williams going to retire soon.
Trent Williams going to retire soon, and all that kind of stuff. But if it's the Niners window, which is what you're saying, it's based on quarterback play. Was the Patriots window ever closed with Tom Brady? No. Will the Chiefs window ever be closed with Patrick Mahomes? No. So it really just depends on if we ever get that franchise quarterback, and if Purdy just ends up being that 10 to 15 range and has spikes up into that 7, 8, 9, he's always going to need a good team behind him in order to compete. If he ends up being a top 5 quarterback and is able to overcome his limitations and have that consistent high level, then it doesn't matter who you're playing with at that point, because you are carrying the team rather than being propped up by it. So,
yeah, I would just say, right now it looks like 2 to 3 years, sort of like echoing your sentiments, Randon. But you just never know. Look at 2020. We returned basically every player from our Super Bowl except for, DeForest Buckner and Emmanuel Sanders, essentially. Oh, and then I guess Staley and Mike Person retired. But we got Trent Williams to replace Staley, which is an upgrade. And Mike Person, come on, he was not a good guard. So, but essentially, we only lost 2 players off that Super Bowl roster. And we gained quite a few others. And yet we missed the playoffs because of massive injuries. So you could have massive injuries, and you could also have just players fall off like before you expect them to. It just can happen injury, or it can just happen just Father Time, catches up.
Bucks brought back everybody, and they were awful the year after their Super Bowl. So
yeah, exactly right. So you just never know. But yeah, I think 2 years, 3 years makes sense right now, barring, but that's why I want Lance, because if you get him, you maybe have 10, 15 years, but we'll see. Every catch, brick by brick. Why does Gibson look like he's been benching baby monster trucks?
I haven't watched it yet. I haven't watched Brick by yet. Yeah.
Where do we find that, James? Is that on the 49ers website?
Yeah, I think it's on the website. I think you can. There's a link to it in their Instagram bio, I believe.
Okay, cool. Because I just honestly, I was like, oh shoot, should I have been recording that on my DVR? So make sure I don't miss the next one. Trade up, for a better right tackle. I think there's a lot of good right tackles, though. I think there will be one in the 20s for us, because left tackles go higher, and sometimes even like a really good center or a really good guard will go higher too. We had so many picks that we couldn't use them all. We weren't allowed. I don't know. I'm not sure I got that one, Randy. He's joking around. Niner window is every year. Yeah, so far since 2019, we've been in the window every year. And hopefully we can. It certainly seems like this team, I just feel like Hargrave is huge for us. I've been saying, Charles Haley 2.0, but in a good way. Like how losing Charles Haley killed us vis-a-vis the Cowboys. I think he could be an Eagles killer for us now. The guy is a proven talent. The Eagles drafted a lot of nice looking players, but draft picks, they fail at a 50% rate roughly for good GMs. And Roseman is a good GM, very good GM. But
yeah, it's gonna
even the
help the
50%.
team. It's gonna help Armstead. I believe it's a great to get brought in, and then everybody believes always that pressure needs to come from the outside. But I mean, we face a guy every year in our division that is the antithesis of that, right? Collapses the entire pocket by himself from the interior.
Aaron Donald, yeah. And I think Chris Jones has really entered that conversation too. But yeah, I mean, that's one reason why I'm not as worried about defensive end as I am about right tackle, because I think Hargrave's going to lift everyone. Bosa, Armstead, everyone will benefit from Hargrave, at least on passing downs. Clearly,
are you getting worried about the Bosa situation? Because I am.
Nope. No,
I'm not worried about him getting paid. I guess maybe I should be more specific. I'm worried about him being injured this season, because 60% of players who miss camp have soft tissue injuries during the season at some point.
He never plays in preseason. The Bosa's different.
But he still goes to practice, and he still goes one-on-one with tackles. And
yeah. I mean, I think it needs to get done this week. I think, or not this week, but like by the third preseason game. So I think in the next week and a half, I think it should be done either right before the third preseason game or that Monday after. I think then I'm still fine. If we start going further, I think 2-3 weeks in pads, going up against Trent is fine. I think part of the thought is like, until your risk of injury is much higher on a 90-man roster than a 53, because there's so many guys desperate to make the team on the 90, and once they make the 53, they don't have to like they're not like fearing for their professional lives essentially, and so I think they're just trying to keep his exposure to people that are maybe playing with desperation to a minimum. Do you think
it's the amount of money in the contract, or do you think it's the guaranteed money?
Guaranteed is always what it comes down to. Yeah, we all obsess over the average annual value, but the players and the GMs, it's the guarantees that is really what stirs the drink or stops the deal, if you will. So
it's like it doesn't seem that, I don't know. I mean, I'm not an agent, but it doesn't.
Do you have a walk away number though, for just to keep it simple with average annual value, like, because that's what we all know. I mean, that's
whatever Aaron Donald's getting paid plus $1.5 million, like.
Okay, so like 31.7 plus, so like 33 million.
Yeah,
I like that. I think you start getting over 35, I get a little nervous. People say 40, I'm like, hell no. I'm like, sorry, but at some point you're better off getting the picks and having all that money. Pay Ayuk, pay get a defensive end, get a right tackle.
Like defensive end is the same position like the quarterback, where it's always just going to continue increasing. I wonder if length of term for the deal is also coming into play. Like Bosa is like, I'm still young. Like, let's do a 3 or 4 year contract. And then that way I can get like 38, 39 million at 27, right? Or 28.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That factors into it. And then the other factor is like, the team wants to sign him to a long deal because you're getting a better deal, not having to re-up sooner, sort of, but then you're also exposing yourself to the injury, which we have to acknowledge with Bosa, since he has 2 ACLs, one in each knee. That's got to be a part of the the calculus, in my opinion. Compared to somebody, if he had 2 healthy knees, I think you'd get more money or longer. You'd be more comfortable signing the longer type deals.
Yeah.
As long as the window is wider than the Cowboys, I don't care. They sweaty forever. I like that. Yeah. Cowboys. I hate the Seahawks. I hate the Eagles, man. They've really popped up quickly just due to their just putrid fan base, the way they treat people, players, fans. They're vile human beings. Not all of them, but most of them.
I mean, I'm in Texas, so it's definitely the Cowboys for me because I hear it all the time. This is our year and all that kind of stuff like that. But man, I really wanted the Seahawks to fail for a little bit. like after they got rid of the ghost of Russell Wilson, and then like he was always haunting us for decades, I thought they were going to be bad for a while, and they proved me wrong.
There you go. Yeah. Well, at least we swept them 3-0 last year. So that's the one thing that's good about Russ being on, because he owned us. Yeah. 17-4 against us, that little punk. So good riddance. I think he'll be better this year for the Broncos. He had a cleanup in his knee, so apparently that's been slowing him down. And I just think the Broncos with Sean Payton, I think they'll do a lot better. We earn more complex, but we can only use so many forfeit. Okay. Oh, comp picks. I think he must be on voice to text. Had to forfeit at least 2 that I know of. Yeah, it happens once you're full up. And full up for a few years on those comp picks, they start to drop off. You actually miss out on some. But as long as you're getting 3 every year, you can't be too disappointed. That's a lot. I mean, it's basically our whole draft. To start our draft this year was all those comp picks. Are we playing Gravedigger next to Bosa? This is Hargrave, Gravedigger. Is he going to play the terrible Taco? Oh, Taco Charlton. He's looked good in camp. Did he even play though Sunday? I didn't recall hearing his name at all.
Yeah, let's see. I got snap counts up here, but I think let's see, Charlton. Where was it at here? No, I don't see him on here for some reason. Oh yeah,
I didn't feel like I saw him.
23 snaps.
23 snaps. Okay, well that's sizable. It's a few drives. Or with the Raiders drives, it's like 1 or 2. They were moving the ball at will, weren't they? I think they will space them out. I think they'll put Armstead next to Bosa and Hargrave, and then our DN, and then that way, the guys in the middle will each get single coverage. But I guess
there's more than one way to slice a pie.
Yeah, and they'll do stunts. I'm sure they'll mix it up. But go ahead, Randon. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I think they'll mix it up. I mean, what's wrong with overloading one side and putting Hargrave with, he takes on the double, triple team, and Bosa's one-on-one with a tight end and a chip running back. Like, you gotta love that matchup every single time. So I think they'll do some stuff. And then Wilkes has been blitzing a lot, so we'll see if they overload the side and blitz a linebacker and have Hargrave and Bosa on the same sides and blitz a linebacker that side as well, and just make it impossible to block that area. So. We'll see. We'll see how it goes on. I don't think there's a wrong way for that.
There you go. So Darnold is really starting on Saturday. He really is, and Kyle said he's going to play the whole first half, just like Lance did on this last Sunday against the Raiders. Darnold will start against the Broncos. I think it was. My thought is that either Darnold earned it in the last game, which is possible because Darnold played well. Or relatively well. It wasn't bad. Or just this was the plan all along. It was like Trey starts Raiders, Darnold starts Broncos, and maybe Purdy starts third game, and then whoever played the best in the 2 games gets the second team reps in our third preseason game, which I have to admit I haven't been keeping track of who that's against.
I don't know either. But I think it was the plan all. I think it was the plan all along. It seems like it is. I mean, they've been splitting reps consistently in camp, and so it seems like this has been the plan from the get go. I don't like it because I think Lance should get as many reps as possible. But
I'm with you.
Maybe I understand everybody's telling. Obviously they use Steve Young, which is asinine. But you could definitely see the Geno Smith archetype for Sam Darnold, right? The talent is there. The arm talent is there. He just has not been consistent in his career. But do you really erase all the bad habits from your career in one training camp? It seems like it would be like a multiple year type event to get a comparable backup or a top end starter out of Sam Darnold. I just don't think that you're taking away quality reps. And if they're not starting any of the starters like they did last time, I guess what's the difference between the 2s and the 3s? It really doesn't make a difference at that point. Ronnie Bell was out there most of the game. Those wide receivers are out there most of the game. Ty Davis Price got 9 runs versus Mason. So if they're not putting the starters out there, then I guess really what is the difference besides, playing 1 quarter versus 2? I guess the amount of reps that you're going to take. But
Well, the defense you face, I mean, Darnold definitely faced an easier defense on Sunday than Trey did. Starting the second half, as as the game wears on, you get deeper and deeper into the depth chart. So that's one difference. So maybe that'll benefit Trey this week. We'll see.
Well, it should. I mean, maybe it'll allow him to play with less pressure. I mean, you got to assume that there was pressure on this kid, starting or whatever. He knows he's got to make this roster. And I don't forget who came out and said it. I think it was actually Steve Young. He's like, you got to know that this kid's trying to make this roster spot. And like, he probably was, had that pressure on him. He hasn't played since September. It is what it is. Maybe, he should shake that off and shake off the rust, and he'll be better suited next game.
Yeah, I had Ryan from No Border Sports on yesterday, and he had a good point. He said basically Trey needs to just rip it and quit worrying about it, and just like if there's an interception, it's Kyle's system, not him. Like just play. And Kyle said as much about the TD essentially. Like he was like, oh, I was glad to see him go for it, sort of for once in that game. So hopefully Lance will get a little more YOLO, a little bit more like you only live once.
Because when you have when you have a big arm quarterback, I mean, a lot of people don't realize Patrick Mahomes has over 10 interceptions from time to time, because he tries to fit balls in windows that they shouldn't be. But then you don't get the amazing plays when he's not doing that. You don't get those types of things from Josh Allen when he's not trying to fit it into a small window. And I brought him up earlier, Brett Favre, right? You have all these amazing plays of his career, and he's a Hall of Famer, but he's a gunslinger for a reason. He throws the football. He doesn't take care of it, but you don't get those awesome plays if you're not willing to make those throws. And so I did the interception turn touchdown, that didn't bother me. Was it a great read? No, but he was trying to fit the ball in there, and he saw something and he went for it, and it happens. That's what preseason is for.
There you go. James is from the UK. He was asking, what's a swing tackle, left tackle or right tackle? It's both. It's a backup tackle that could swing between left or right depending on who gets injured. So ideally, it's both, but not as good as either. It's your backup, not the starter. So yeah, tacos are good, but I like Rob Beal Jr. He schooled Trent. Robert Beal has the speed for sure. He's got the first step and a fast 40 time. We'll see if he can put it together. I have a feeling it might be more Austin Bryant, the one we got from the Lions, just because he's a veteran. But he's battled with injuries, so that'll be interesting. Great one says, shaking my head. Not sure what that one's about. Love the double blocks. Justin Smith used to eat up on Alden. Alden could feast. I hope they line up together so Bosa can break the sack record. Yeah, I mean, I think Bosa should be 20 plus. So can he get 22 or 22 and a half or whatever? 23? It's a good question, but I think there are some parallels between just the Cowboy and Alden compared to Hargrave and Bosa. A lot of similarities.
The line's at 15 and a half for Bosa. You over under on that?
Oh, I'd smash that. Yeah, I mean, he had 18 and a half. I think he's going to have. I think 20 is sort of my over under for Bosa this year. Yeah. Assuming that we can get some decent play from the D end. But I mean, even just with him and Armstead and Hargrave, that's a lot of firepower. A lot of money for sure. They better live up to it. we're paying for it. So they say you get what you pay for. We'll see. Great one says, a chance for Trey to gain more reps and experience, and Kyle effing it up. The way I feel, I'm frustrated with Kyle. Like I said, I'm a Shanna fan, at least for now, but I just want to see him do better. I don't want to fire him, but this QB thing, it's starting to get to be a thing. It's a thing. So, if you prop up Purdy and he does well, good job, Kyle. If you prop up Purdy and he falls on his face, you're going to hear from a lot of people. And I guess, if Darnold is in there too, maybe he should be competing too. I don't know. I don't believe in Darnold, but I can't rule him out yet. So I don't know. All I know is in camp, I had Lance the best. Darnold was noticeably not as good, and Purdy maybe not quite as good as Darnold. Some of that's probably going against the first team D, but and Darnold was really dink and dunk. some people called Purdy dink and dunk, but I feel like Darnold was the one who dink and dunk in camp.
Which is the antithesis of how he's played his whole career. Like he's never been afraid to air it out. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's trying to make sure not to make any mistakes, and that's just not the way to play good football. That's what Trey looked like on Sunday, and that was not good. I should let Trey play the whole damn game, I guess. But like I said, not if the O line is bad. I think you want to try and protect these guys, and also if you're not running the ball again, that would be a mistake in my opinion. But we'll see. I just hope Saturday doesn't come and he chokes in the third quarter. What are going to be excuses then? I guess we'll see, Randy. We'll see what happens. But my facts that I listed are already there, that we didn't run the ball. The O-line didn't block well. I don't know if you saw, Random, but there was a stat Warren Sharp put out that I retweeted that basically of the 75 QBs who played last week, only 5 had higher pressure rates than Trey Lance. So some of that you can say was him holding the ball too long, but some of it is like our weapons not separating. I know that JT O'Sullivan showed some plays where like, oh, you got to throw that. And I agree with some of them, but some, I think like once you're rattled, I think it leads to more being rattled. And he even said it in one of his, it's like, when the guy came in unblocked on the B gap and he's like, you can't have that. And it sort of, leads to things down the road, and it just, you wonder, is it a free runner or am I seeing ghosts? Was what he said, and obviously ghosts is more of the Sam Darnold thing, but I think it can happen to any QB when you're getting hammered a lot.
Yeah, I mean, there's indecision and bad offensive line play. I just don't think there's like excuses for what it's preseason. Like are we really? I mean, it's Justin Fields was like, oh, like this was easy, on my first preseason game, this is slow. Like I thought this was gonna be a lot faster. And then he went on to just get manhandled. I think he had like -2 passing yards his first game in the regular season. It's just not the same, and I don't think if Lance never makes it in this league, it's not going to be because we know for sure that he wasn't talented enough. He just wasn't given the opportunity. And I'll always stand by that.
Yeah, Randy's asking, has Trent maybe lost a step? Maybe.
Yeah, it's practice.
Possible.
Let's see.
No, but Trent Williams, you're saying?
Yeah, it's practice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean.
Oh, because he's getting beat on one-on-ones. I see. Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's just he's not. I think he's practicing to not get hurt. Same thing with Armstead and Hargrave. Like we didn't see much from them in camp. All of a sudden, you go to the joint practices. They both showed up against the Raiders. So I think it's just a matter of effort. I think not a matter of a lost step, and just trying to stay healthy. Randy says tipping is bad, gratuity is better. Okay. Oh, tipping the plays. That's Trent tipping plays with his taking a step before the plays started. If he's still got at least 2 steps on the league. There you go. I like that. Sim, what's up, Sim? Welcome. Haven't seen you in a while. Thanks for coming back. So they're not even moving on from Wilson. They'll probably keep him until Rodgers retires. Yeah, probably.
I mean, that could be an interesting situation. I mean, you look at he gets to train under, Rodgers for 2 years. Like they gave him the opportunity to work through it as a rookie. It didn't happen, and then now they're going for Plan B, but it could work out, and then or Zach Wilson just may never be the quarterback in this league. You just never know. But he's looked a lot more confident in the Hard Knocks. I haven't watched the newest episode yet, but the first episode he looked a little more confident.
There you go. Got Jess from East Coast Red and Gold in the house. What's up, Jess? She has a great podcast every Wednesday at 5. She had Mark Adams on yesterday to do the Roger Craig Hall of Fame stuff. Welcome, Jess. Thanks for joining. We got Bryant Culp. He has a great podcast as well. Make sure you check him out, and his wife, Tony. They do the women's roundtables every Saturday night at 5, and Bryant does morning coffee shows on the weekends. Good stuff, especially on game days, but any day is good. Welcome. Except for, I think we're kind of getting towards the end of things here. How you feeling, Randon? I kind of feel like we've covered everything.
Was
there anything you want to go over before we wrap things up?
I think this is going to be interesting in where this preseason ends. what do you want to see from this game? Is there somebody that in the first preseason game you want to see more of? Is there somebody that needs to take that next step from you outside the quarterbacks? We talked quarterbacks ad nauseum. Outside the quarterbacks, is there anybody that really kind of disappointed in the first game that you would like to see kind of rebound? Where would that be for you?
Yeah, I mean, Kinlaw was a star in camp and did not show up against the Raiders. Isaiah Oliver, the Nichols, Isaiah Oliver and Womack, I think both could do a little bit better. I was really pleased with Jameson, the young corner who also does the returns. Like to see more of him. I like Ronnie Bell. I think they could be a two-headed monster. They could replace Ray. Ronnie Bell could, if not returns, Ronnie could take the receiving gadget player, Debo backup type role, and Jameson could be the return, just based off what I saw Sunday. As far as offense goes, I want to see Latu start catching some balls. That's been really frustrating, and then with a fumble to go with the drops, that's just oof. But I really want to see him block really well because I wanted Darnell Washington. He went 6 picks after Jair Brown, and the Steelers got him. And I was just like, when we're worried about right tackle, what's better than for a tackle's friend than a great tight end? And I know we got Kittle, but when Kittle's blocking, he's not receiving, folks. So you don't have to be a great receiver to really help out this team at tight end if you can suck up some of Kittle's blocking duties. It's just nice if you can catch some so they don't know that it's a run play when you come in, so you're not tipping your hand. You worry about Trent Williams tipping your hand, while tight end too can tip your hand if they can't catch. So those are some of them, I think.
I think I'd like to see a little bit more from the running back position. A little bit of trudging, not really a lot of hitting the holes and some explosive runs, both from Mason and Ty Davis-Price. I doubt Elijah Mitchell plays in this game just because he's coming off an injury. So they're going to get the majority of it, of the work. And, we don't wish injury upon everybody or anybody, but we know it's a definite possibility that there's going to be parts of the season where we're missing Elijah Mitchell and or CMC based on their previous histories. And Jordan Mason and Ty Davis-Price are going to have to eat up those carries. And I'd like to see them have a little bit more explosion to their runs that we saw in camp from Ty Davis-Price and we saw last year from Jordan Mason. So,
yeah, I'm more of a Mason guy just because I feel like TDP we've seen, but he did look great in camp, so I'll give him credit. And that was the other thing with Kyle is like the obviously the QB mistakes, and then I was saying third round running back mistakes, and lately I'm just like, Jesus Lord, it's like the whole third round except for anyone named Fred. It's like has been real gaff. So like I said, still a Shanna fan. Don't want him fired, but I want to clean these up. I want to see Moody make some field goals. Obviously after those misses, I want to see Latu not fumble. And yeah, I like the running backs. That's a good one. And then obviously there's tons of skilled wide receivers. That's, I think Conley's been the best. But I like Bell. I like Tay Martin, and obviously I've been rooting for Danny Gray. I just think you can't really be a deep threat wide receiver without a deep threat QB. So like, I just don't know what you're going to do with Purdy and Danny Gray. I just don't think that's a match made in heaven.
Do you think any starters get one series this time?
I hope not. I mean, as much as I want to see Lance with the starters, and then, clearly it wouldn't happen in the third quarter anyway. But even, for Darnold, somebody was saying, oh, well, I always say, Lance hasn't had CMC and just barely had Kittle. I even made a meme for it because I was so tired of typing it. So he's like, well, Darnold hasn't either. I'm like, well, Darnold hasn't played with any of our starters in a game. So shut up. It's not the same thing. Haters. Anyway, I think I really, I don't want to see Ayuk. I don't want to see Debo. I don't want to see. Maybe no. I think they'll wait. If we're not playing Purdy, I really don't think we'll see them. I think they'll wait until game 3, and it'll be like a series or a first quarter at the most.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think we've learned from these other teams, like that. There's nothing to be gained from playing in preseason. I'd rather start slow than start injured.
Fair enough.
Yeah. What do you think?
I think if the player wants to play, then like if they feel like they need it, like Mahomes went out, and I keep referencing him, but he was open about it. He said, I need a couple series. Like I'd like a couple series. I'd like to go out there and play. So if Ayuk feels like he wants to get out there and play a series and do some routes in a real game, then like I think it should be somewhat up to the player. If they feel like they don't need it, then wait for the third game. But if somebody wants to get some extra reps in and be in a real time game and hit somebody for real, right? Because in practice you're tackling, but you're not going that extra percentage, right? They say like you're 40 times better if you're racing somebody than if you're running on your own. So, if some people want to go out there and get some real hits in and real game time feel for a series or two, I think that should be up to them, to see if they feel like they need that for the season. If they don't, and they feel like the third preseason game's enough, then, let them stay out. Other people got a chance to earn the roster spots at that point.
Love it. That's a great idea. Leave it up to them. Yeah, then no one can blame them. No one can blame the coach in that case. Awesome, Randon. Well, thanks a lot for coming on the show. I appreciate it. We'll have to do it again
for having me.
Before too long. Everybody make sure you follow Rando Commando 24 on Twitter. That's Randon. And then also he's got the hockey at hockey_royalty. Great follow, great guy, awesome guest, and appreciate your time. And I'll just say peace and go Niners.